recovery solution.
Mm-hmm.
I want to have a bit of an overview of it, see the features, and you can take it really from there.
Yeah.
The reason I do that is because every 2 weeks I host webinars.
Yeah.
And recently I've changed my business in quite a lot, where I've set up another 4 companies that focus in certain key areas so that I can offer better products and better services. I'm also in the process of getting rid of quite a lot of partners that I don't see adding value now or moving in the future.
Okay.
I am wanting to use RedStor moving forward, depends on how this demo goes and the solution goes.
Yeah.
The one go-to solution. The plan would be is to roll it out in Absolute Cyber Services and then to roll it out through my other organisations.
Uh-huh.
It's basically, as I described, like a circle. So if I need something from my educational company, I can just grab it and it'll come together. What the plan is I'm quite big in the education, and I have customers that are either on Acronis.
Okay, yeah.
They use my cyber infrastructure, so I have a data center that they're hooked up to.
Yeah, so you're providing the storage for that with Acronis.
Yes.
Okay.
They can have on-site in the cloud network share, and they can also have me as, say, a third backup. Then I also work with Mapping Reflect. I only have 4 customers on that, and that's the educational.
Yeah.
I also offer hardware appliances, which works with ArcServe.
Yeah, no ArcServe as well.
And they are the main companies that I work with. But as I say, moving forward, my main goal is to use yourselves moving forward as the one go-to company.
No, so no pressure on me then. That means I've got to do a really good job now.
So what I'm just basically looking for is an overview of the solution, a bit in detail about each part of the product, and usually at the end, what I do is I answer a couple of questions that usually are focused on the educational side.
Uh-huh.
And then what I will do is once you've sent me this webinar, I will brand it with my company logo on the YouTube channel, on the Facebook page. That's another way for it to reach the vendors and partners that I work with and customers.
Okay.
Usually on a webinar, I have between 400 to 600 people virtually attend.
Okay.
And that's basically where my traffic has come from. Originally, it was word of mouth, and then it's grown to the reputation. Then I've branched out into different areas, offering different products. And then when it's become too big, too quick, this is where I've had to radically change my model, people that I work with, and moving forward, I'm wanting to work with a select few so that I offer a better relationship with the vendor, better relationship with the client. They're happy, I'm happy, you're happy if you will.
Okay, awesome. Okay, well, I'm completely happy with that. So I've got the session in recording at the moment. So before we sort of get onto it, so I'm going to give you a high-level overview of RedStor via about 5 PowerPoint slides. Then I'm going to drop into the software, give you a bit of a guided tour around the console, and I'm going to try and major on the unique stuff about RedStor. I'm not going to, obviously we back up and recover files, but I want to sort of cover off the stuff that's a little bit unique, if that's okay, Tom.
Yeah, the one thing that I love is the instant data feature.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, definitely.
That's a big thing for me, is the way you do it compared to other competitors. Because currently the way I have it set up with a couple of schools is they can say, I fire up a virtual machine for them, and it's on my company network. They then have access to their data, say it's a school, and they have all like registration, fingerprints, biometrics, canteen systems, whatnot. In the meantime, I then set up another virtual machine, and that will recover to one of their servers their data, and that's done by a network share permissions access only.
Oh, okay.
So then, whilst obviously they've got the main systems up, the main company data or skill data is recovering at the same time, so it's causing less downtime.
Okay, so that's how you currently do it.
Yes, I found
Okay.
into it many times. I've just stuck to it.
Well, what I'll do is again, I'll show you how RedStor works, and then at the end of it, if you've got any questions, we'll answer the questions if that's okay, Tom.
Perfect.
Brilliant. Right, let's just check my mouse is on the correct screen. You should see the RedStor Smart Data Management banner.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Right, so let me just go through a few of these slides. So I'm going to give you a very quick high-level overview of RedStor. So we are headquarters in the UK. We have physical data centers that we've built in the UK. However, we do have data centers around the globe. So if you have an enterprise or a company that is international, maybe they've got data in the US or as far as Australia, New Zealand, come and let us know, and we can make sure data sovereignty is maintained for that customer. Another thing I normally also point out is how long RedStor have been providing cloud backup services. And we've actually been going, I think it's nearly 26 years. And either impressive or sad, I've been with RedStor 19 years. So hopefully I know what I'm talking about in terms of this session today. So I'm going to move on if that's okay. There's plenty more information on www.redstor.com, which you can come and have a little look at about what our products and services do. But I'm going to move swiftly on if that's okay. And also there's some more information that you can obtain about what our customers are saying about RedStor on the g2.com website. So that's a website sort of consumer-led where people can discuss and comment on what they're using for backup, online backup, disaster recovery, and disaster recovery as a service. So again, that's well worth a look to see what our RedStor customers are saying about us. So in terms of our product or our service, is I'm going to start over here on the left-hand side. So this is everything you can currently protect with RedStor. So you can back up endpoints like laptops and desktops. You can also protect remote data that sits across network shares, maybe NASes. We've got various application integration. Our bread and butter really is the protection of servers, whether they're Windows, Linux, or Mac. And then what we call unstructured data, which is your typical file server dumping ground, which never really shrinks in size. I'll come on to that in a second. And then we've got our dedicated integration for databases such as SQL, and we've engineered our software to work on enterprise-size SQL services. So if you've got SQL databases that are multiple terabytes in size, other vendors struggle, whereas we've engineered our software to work for hundreds of millions of files and extremely large enterprise data sets. And then everything really above SQL above is our backup as a service from other vendors, like from the cloud. So we've got Azure Kubernetes. We also back up Azure native VMs directly into RedStor. We've got our Microsoft 365 integration for protecting OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, and email. Then we've got our Google Google Workspace integration for Google Drive and Gmail and Calendar and Contacts. Then we've got integration for the cloud accountancy software Xero, Salesforce, and also we've got QuickBooks about to be released at the end of this month. So we're not sitting still. There's lots of development. All of this software is maintained by RedStor. The key components to RedStor then is obviously we're talking about backup and recovery, and of course retention. So we guarantee that if you select a file with RedStor, and that's going to send that into our cloud storage around the globe, wherever you need it. So whether it's the UK, the US, or Europe, or wherever it needs to be, we provide the cloud storage. And we also keep 4 months worth of retention by default within our data centers. So that's pretty standard, very straightforward, backup and recovery of files and folders, which I'll take you through. But also from a Windows and Linux perspective, we can also do full disaster recovery. So that means you can place an agent on a physical machine or a machine that's in Hyper-V or VMware or Zen Server or Nutanix, or even sitting in Azure or Rackspace. and we can do full disaster recovery as long as it's a Windows or a Linux host. And of course, what's unique about that is that we don't care where you're going to recover to. So you can recover back to bare metal, recover to Hyper-V or VMware or Azure, all cross-platform. So that's quite useful with RedStor. You're not tied to where the original source machine was backed up from. You can recover it where you like. The next thing is our archiving. So this is pretty much a free feature. So if you took this file server here and imagine that was, I don't know, 10 terabytes in size, I could bet you that there is tons of data, maybe even 50%, that hasn't been touched for 2 or 3 years, and it's just left redundant on disk. And that has a cost for your end user because they're having to maintain and keep that server maintained each 3 to 5 years as they refresh that hardware or the SAN. So what you can do with RedStor is back up that 10 terabytes. That's obviously protected in our RedStor data centers. And then you can create an archiving policy to say, well, if a file hasn't been touched for 3 years, can't be too important. So what we'll do is we'll remove it from the original source machine, but replace the original file with a very tiny few K stub file. And if a user clicks on that stub file, it rehydrates the file or whatever that data is back to the original location on demand. So you're effectively slimming down your server, but you're also allowing users or applications to restore data as it ages out of your host. The other thing we've then done, now this is an opt-in. Now, obviously, with security is paramount with RedStor. So our malware detection is an opt-in service. What you're effectively saying is, even though with encryption, a key exchange takes place, but what you're basically saying is RedStor can keep hold of that key for a little bit longer so that we can scrape your data via artificial intelligence. It's not a human doing it. It's built for this purpose. And it's going to come back with a list of any of the files that sit across any of your environments, any of your distributed sites, your Google, your Microsoft 365, and come back with a list of any potential threats that are sitting across your data center. Now, what we're not saying is we're not a replacement for AV, but what we do find is when somebody recovers from malware after getting hit by a ransomware attack, is sadly sometimes the ransomware re-emerges several months later because you've restored that threat that got you into the problem in the first place. Then the next thing I want to talk about is instant data. Now, this is critical to how you can do many different types of recoveries with RedStor. So I'm just going to bring up a bandwidth calculator, and this is available from our download site if you like the look of this. But I happen to have a 15 terabyte system that I protected with RedStor, and I've probably got a faster network than 100 meg. But if I hit the calculate button, what you might be surprised is to see the time it would take to move 15 terabytes from A to B across a 100 meg network. So that's 2 weeks, 13 hours, 31 minutes. So, you know, that's not acceptable to anybody. So I'm going to give you a very quick demo straight away. So I'm going to log into my web console. Hopefully it hasn't timed out. Oh, it's timed out. Let me just log back in very quickly. That's good because you get to see the login step. Right, so now I must do the multi-factor authentication on my phone. So bear with me while I pull up my app, find my login, and stick in the multi-factor authentication in. Right, so here I am in the management console. Now I'm actually going to zip to the UK data center where I have a reseller under my customers group called To My Cloud, and he's got pretty much all of the products added here. He's got some Google, he's got some Microsoft 365, and he's currently protecting 31 terabytes of data. And I know where the majority of that data sits. It sits within my machine's infrastructure. And then I've got a group called My Servers. And again, all of this is customizable. And there you go. You can see I've got 4 devices in my My Servers container that's backing up. So if we pick on my Synology NAS, that's already backed up at 1 a.m. this morning. It's currently 15.4 terabytes. So if I want to get my hands on that data sharpish, this is what you can do with RedStor. So I'm going to launch the instant data tool from our little menu there. And again, security is paramount. So I need to put in the PIN, allow me access to the software. And then we should see this instant data exe has now downloaded. And again, I'm not showing you the Me Too stuff. This is the sort of the uniqueness to RedStor. So this is your DR tool. So in the event of a disaster, you could be wanting to do a permanent restore, a temporary restore, or doing full system disaster recovery. And this is where it's going to create a full bootable system for you. Now, in my case, I just want access to that 15 terabytes from RedStor's vault. So I'm going to hit next. Now, Windows is asking me on my other screen what am I up to? So I've just clicked on accept. And now I must stick in the encryption key that is only known to me, because of course, anything that is stored with RedStor is encrypted, depending on your relationship as an MSP or end customer. I'll let you decide who knows the key, but it's certainly something to be kept safe. Okay, so now I've popped in the valid encryption key. I'm just going to show you that the laptop I'm presenting from has a C drive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount the last backup as a Z drive over here on my laptop. And there it is. And that is now me full access to all of that 15.4 terabytes as it looked at 1 o'clock this morning. And it's actually 2 NASs and a C drive and my CCTV. So I'm going to go into one of my NASs, go to my video folder. Actually, come back. I'm going to go into my stuff folder and then into videos. And you'll see the Explorer for the first time has read a very small percentage of that 14 or 15 terabytes. And now, just for a bit of fun, let's go and stream a video from my backup. Might just take a second or two to start. There we go. And more importantly, my favorite part of this movie is the minis. So if we go there, we've jumped straight to a particular part of a file. Now, I know we do this all the time with movies, but we can also do the same with an Exchange or a SQL database. It's just data at the end of the day, and the application is requesting 1 minute, 20 seconds. So it skips all of the blocks it doesn't need and moves you straight to the bit that the application, in this case, VO Player, wants to access. So that's exactly how our instant data works. And in this case, it's all about temporary access. But what I'd like to go on and show you is how we could do full disaster recovery and also combine instant data permanent to bring down your recovery time objectives to sort of, sub 30 minutes. Tom, was there any questions at that bit before I move on?
No, I'm very happy with that.
All good. So let's just quickly nip back to my PowerPoint. So that was the instant data I've just given you a demonstration from. And again, won't talk pricing on this particular session, but typically it's done on either a price per gig or for the likes of Microsoft 365 and Google, we can do it on a per seat basis. So come and let us know what you've got and we can articulate the pricing and commercials for you. Security is paramount. We use 2 forms of encryption to ensure nobody but the author of the encryption key has access to either the console or data. Performance, again, is paramount, especially as we are a true cloud service. So any data that gets sent to us is purely what's changed since the last successful backup. And we do binary level incrementals. You'd be amazed at how little changes daily on a server. Built to scale, scales up as you as MSPs or you as end customers bring on more data and add new servers to your service. And in terms of resiliency and flexibility, I'm going to use my final slide just to articulate where the data is going. So as I mentioned, RedStor, we provide the cloud storage. So you're not buying RedStor and then having to work out how to configure S3 or Glacier storage. It's all built into the RedStor service. And if we're talking about our UK service, we have built our own data centers, and the data resides in Slough in a highly secure data center, and then it's automatically replicated to a secondary highly secure data center in Reading. So data never leaves the UK. We are utilizing Azure and AWS around the globe. So again, if you have sovereignty requirements, come and let us know. We already have RedStor services pretty much around the globe. And we always keep a primary copy of your data. So we'll have 4 months worth of historical versions in our primary data center. And we'll also have 4 months worth of recovery history in our mirror location. Again, it's all centrally managed from a web console, which I'll take you through in a second. A typical customer might have physical servers, desktops and laptops, your virtualization, so that would be Hyper-V or VMware. And again, I'll show you the agent in a second, but we're an agent-led technology. So you would load an agent on each of the virtual machines that you wish to protect, all the physical machines, all the laptops, and that will then package up the data, send it across the internet securely to our primary data center, where it's then replicated to our secondary data center, and then we just continue doing incrementals forever, and we retain 4 months history. Now, you might spot over here on the far left-hand side that there is the capabilities of having a local backup copy. And again, you do not need to have a local backup copy. This is not needed in order for RedStor to function. However, if your customer does have some redundant storage, maybe you've just switched off another vendor that relies on on-premise storage, you could then repurpose that storage for on-premise backup. So you get the best of both worlds. And again, Windows is our bread and butter, followed by Linux. Mac, we can back up files and folders. We've got recovery integration for Hyper-V and VMware, all back to bare metal, or to recover entire machines into Azure. So what I'd like to do is talk about the agent, and maybe we'll do some DR restores, and then we'll also move into maybe Office 365 if we have time. So I'm going to bring back up the management console, and again, I'm going to log back in with my demo user. Let me choose my demo user. There he is. And again, anytime you log into our managed service, you'll be prompted to authenticate using multi-factor authentication. Just got to find my user. There it is. Right, 086320. Okay, so now we're back logged into the management console. I'm going to show you 2 views. So if you're an MSP, you have your MSP view. So if we click on customers, you'll see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 customers. And if I look over here, I can see that Big Screen Broadcasting is my largest customer, who's protecting 5.2 terabytes, followed by Rian Consulting, who's done 0.5 terabyte. And of course, all of these graphs and dashboards are to help you manage that service. So if I go into Big Screen Broadcasting, I can see what products that customer has taken on board. So it's got AWS, it's got Azure backups, Google Workspace, and machines. I'm going to stick with machines again for now. And I've got a group called laptops, and there is my laptop that I'm presenting from. That would have done a backup today, this morning, 204 gig, all is good. And let's go into my server container, where I've got a list of some of my machines around the globe. And I'm going to use my ESE demo system. So I can see its backup was last successful yesterday at 7. It's protecting 100 gig. And more importantly, if I'm providing a managed service for that customer, what happens if he phones up and says, oh, I need some help recovering, or can you tell me what this means? So from our web dashboard, what we call the Red app, everything's centrally managed. So I'm going to remote manage my machine that's in London from my comfy chair. So what's effectively happening is my console is connected to RedStor service. My machine in London, I know backed up last night, so I know it's working, and there's a heartbeat between our service. So what we should see any second now, it says, it's my calculator, that's my internal backup. I'm just waiting for it to appear. Well, where is it? Here it comes. Right, so what's happening now is we are going to have a remote connection to my server in London. Took a while for it to wake up. And now what you're seeing is the agent that's loaded on each of the Windows or Linux or Macs that you want to back up and protect. And during the installation of this guy, you're asked to provide a valid encryption key that you want to use. And effectively, it's as simple as including or excluding files and folders that you want to back up. Now, what you might notice is the majority of these folders are all green. And the reason why they're green is when the engineer installed this agent, he left this button on, which is on by default, which is our full system disaster recovery option. So that's effectively going to allow me to do full system restores. The fact that that button is turned on, that means that the agent is going to take everything we need in order to be able to recover SQL and recover the system state, but more importantly, a fully bootable virtual machine. So in this case, again, I don't want to go through the Me Too stuff, but if I go to the Restore tab whilst we're on the machine in London, and this will load the catalogue of the last backup on the 1st of September. And you'll see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 backups under the local heading. So what that is my agent in London is being configured with that local backup, and it's been told to retain 5 on-premise backups. So again, pulling that arrow down, you'll then see I've got all of the online backups. So I've got my first backup in September. I've got all of my backups throughout August, the previous month. And then I should have a roll up for July and a roll up for June. So that's our standard retention, but that's not a technical limitation. If you need to keep longer retention, that's not a problem. Come and let us know, and we can crank up that retention for you. So imagine now my server in London has just been hit by ransomware. It's no longer functioning. I'm now reliant on RedStor and whoever's got access to the management console to start resurrecting that machine and getting up and running. So let me go back to my browser. And there's my machine that I need to recover. So it's 100 gig. I'm going to click on the 3 little dots and I'm going to run that instant data DR tool for the second time. So let's go and stick in the pin. 371903. Okay, so this time round, we're going to look at the full system disaster recovery option. So I'm going to click next. And in terms of full DR, now I'm going to do the restore from the cloud because I want to show you the speed of the internet from RedStor. But if you had that local copy enabled, where I had the 5 different revisions, you could recover full systems from the on-premise copy. Now I'm going to do it from the internet, and of course, before I can access any of the data, I've got to stick in a valid encryption key. Right, and again, because we are doing DR from our backups, we can go back 4 months. We can choose any point in time. So let's do the 22nd of August. And of course, because we take the backups within the Windows host itself, we can retrospectively output to VMware, directly restore to Azure, recover via bare metal script, or in my case, I'm going to do a bog standard VHDX for Hyper-V. And I just need a location. I'm working from home today, so I'm going to do it into a folder called VM, and let's call it Hyper-V. That will do. Now, if I was to hit the start button, that's going to restore 100 gig of data from RedStor. Now, even that virtual machine had a 0.5 terabyte hard drive. This is the data that I require in order to boot up that system, along with what was selected and obviously what was excluded. Now, if this was a 15 terabyte system, as I showed you with the bandwidth calculator, which I think is still here, if it was really 15 terabytes, that's going to take weeks to do the restore. So what we can do is we can look at the volume settings and we can use a combination of RedStor's features to speed up the restore. So I'm just waiting for it to show me how that server's configured. And I happen to know it's configured with a C drive and an L drive. So there we go. We can see disk 1, volume 1 is the boot partition. Disk 1, volume 2 is, volume 2 is the C drive, which is actually only 84 gig. And I know disk 2 is only 15 gig, but imagine that was the 15 terabytes. That one drive alone is going to take weeks to restore. So let's deselect that volume, because I've got another plan for that in a second. So we brought the restore down to a manageable 84 gig. We're going to hit next, and I'll leave this up here. Now this is using my internet, so we've done 300 meg, 400 meg, 500 meg, 700, 8, 9, there we go. So we've done our first gig, believe it or not, of 84 gig. So this bar is your recovery time objectives. Until it's got over here, we can't boot up that system. But as you can see, we're already doing nearly 3 gig. So this is probably going to take about 25 to 30 minutes with the bandwidth that I have. I'm on a Virgin Media network. It's probably about 150 meg, to be fair. But that's going quite nicely. We'll leave that in the background. So if you can imagine, we could speed up time. And we've waited 25, 30 minutes for this 84 gig to reside on my machine. Then we can go into Hyper-V. So let's just go into my folder. There we go. And you'll see that disk is busy restored. Now, if you notice, that is saying 6 gig, where over here it's closer to 7 gig. This is the uncompressed size. This is the compressed version. Now, if you can imagine, in 25, 30 minutes, we're going to power up that C drive in Hyper-V. And the nature of Hyper-V is we can go into the disk manager and we can create a new virtual disk, which I'm going to simulate with a folder called disk 2. And of course, when it takes minutes to add that to the operating system, format it, give it a drive letter, let's say L drive. But we've now got a folder with 15 terabytes of free disk space, but of course it's empty. So what we'll do is we'll go back to the RedStor Instant Data tool, which I can find in my downloads area. This time, I want to show you the permanent file recovery. Let's hit next. Windows is asking me what am I up to, and then I'll need to stick in the encryption key. Let's do that. Okay, so we get a slightly different interface than before. So this is my disk 2 that's currently empty. This is the L drive we didn't bother restoring from RedStor. And as you can see, I've got all of my users. They've got all of their data that's important to them. But again, going back to the scenario that we spoke about archiving, the other way around is probably, yes, if this was 15 terabytes of data, the likelihood of Ed needing all of that data all in one go is probably slim. He might need just a very small percentage to get on with his day job. So what we can do with this tool is drag my entire file server folder from RedStor, drop it into this empty folder. And what you'll see in a second is that folder will appear. There it is, file server. And all of my users appears. So if I pick one of my users, let's pick Paul. And let's just imagine Paul needs to do his expenses. And I've got 10 files here. So let's pick lucky number 7. See what happens when I click on it. So all of a sudden, Paul is happy because he's going to get his £94 back. Now, obviously, it's impossible what's just happened because we've literally only just started that restore and it's barely at 2%. So what's in fact happening, and these are all fake files, just like the archiving I spoke about. So let's go and look for, there's a chunky file, a video, right? So we look at this file, and this file is, oh, it's not actually that big, but it's, well, 100, just under 100 meg, and it's 0 bytes on my machine. So if I double click on that, and run it in VL Player. God knows what this video is, incidentally. Oh, there we go. It's a storm, I think, with a surfer out there. Anyway, the point being is 30 seconds ago, that was not on my hard drive. So what's happening is we're streaming that video and we're accessing it from RedStor all the time. It's in the process of being downloaded and queue jumping, if you like. So once we've let that video play in its entirety, there we go. If we revisit this file and look at the properties of it, you'll see that it's back to its original size. I can edit that file. Last time it was accessed was the 2nd of September, and everything's good. So even though it might take 2 weeks to move 15 terabytes from A to B, RedStor would still be the same as any other cloud vendor. If you put data in AWS or an Azure blob storage, to move it back to a traditional server will take that long. But with RedStor, as you can see, doesn't matter. We're at 8% of the restore. We've got a little bit to go, or quite a lot to go, but that doesn't stop me from accessing any of the data that I've got protected with RedStor. So hopefully that all made sense. I know I covered off a lot there, and we've still got the full system restore, which is pretty much over a quarter of the way. It's done 27 gig in the time I kicked it off, so it's doing really good speeds there to get that server up and running in a short space of time. So if it's all right, I'd like to just maybe move on to Office 365 very quickly. So if I go back into our web console, and I remembered there was, if you remember at the start, there was 2 views. So this was our MSP view that shows all of my customers. But when a customer logs in, they can have their own login. So this is where it's under the heading My Company. And you can see what this customer is using. So I'm protecting 1.5 terabytes. I've got Microsoft 365, Google Workspace, and 14 machines backed up. So let's go into Microsoft 365 area. And you'll see in here, I've got Exchange that I've configured in here to back up. I've got OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. And let's go into email, because email is always a good example. So I can see I'm protecting 44 gig of email. I've got 27 Exchange groups that I've selected for backup. And we can see my Adam Cronin user. Last backup was successful. And we can see how much email I've got in my mailbox. So let's say Adam was on the phone and said, oh, help desk guy, help me. I've just deleted some really important emails. I've accidentally cleared the recycle bin. How can I get this data back? So if you're using RedStor, it's not a problem at all. You would go find that user, ask the user, well, what date did you do the deletion? Well, I did it on the 10th. So, okay, let's look in the 10th of August. And we also support Exchange archiving. So we've got your traditional Exchange, OneDrive, and mailbox, but we've also got the archiving. So let's go into my mailbox and maybe go into that user's inbox. And finally, let's go and choose a couple of mail items, hit recover. And I can either export those handful of items to a PST file. Maybe there was a HR case that HR wanted to see Adam's email on a particular day because he's been up to no good. But in this case, let's just recover those emails back to Adam's Outlook. So going to have to go through the security checks. So again, first thing is I've got to prove that I've got the privileges within RedStor. So I'm going to pop in my PIN. 8, 3, 4, 7, 5, 4. Okay, and now Microsoft 365 is getting in the mix and saying, well, hang on a minute, you're going to go and send me a handful of emails. You need to prove you have administrator rights for Microsoft 365. And again, this user's called Adam. It's my user, but he is my tenant user. So dev test on M. All right, let's see if that works. And again, I need to stick in my password. Then I have to do multi-factor authentication, which hasn't appeared. I had this earlier, actually. I'll tell you what we'll do is let's do it via a text message. Maybe my phone's broken.
No, I keep having that on the app myself, where sometimes it doesn't appear.
Yeah, it's we're reliant on a third party here. This is not us. This is the others. Right, I think I've got my text message. Yeah, I've got a Microsoft alert. Right, 046225. Cool. Right, so we've done all the security checks. We're now preparing to recover to the cloud. So what you'll see in a second is this little bar at the top of the screen should start shimmying to show that a restore is in progress. It says go on, start shimmying. Maybe it's already done it. Let's have a look. Change spell. What task we've got running? There we go. So I've got a task that's queued. So we'll come back to that in a second. Maybe it's Friday afternoon. Maybe things go on a bit of a go slow across the internet. Right. So we'll come back to that in a second. Now the other scenario is, of course, we can do exactly the same. We can browse into individual users' OneDrives and pick a date and time, and we can recover data back to their OneDrive. But we can also use the instant data tool that you saw me use as permanent recovery or the temporary recovery. So here's a scenario. Imagine you've spent all of the last year or so over the COVID putting your data in Microsoft 365 SharePoint, and all of a sudden Microsoft have a bad day. Probably not a global outage. It's more likely a particular node that unfortunately your data might sit on. So if that was the case, your employees are going to be saying, well, hang on a minute, how can I access the company SharePoint today? So I've got Adam's Jeep page here. There's 1.2 gig in there. I'm going to select it. And instead of restoring it to Microsoft 365, which you can either choose to overwrite or create a brand new site, I'm going to use instant data. So again, I've got to stick in the authentication code. Sorry about this, but you cannot be complacent around security.
You can't compromise on it, surely.
No, right. It helps if I'm typing on the screen. Like 8 seconds left. Can I do it? So now, because I'm trying to access Microsoft data, Microsoft is also getting in there. Do that once more. Stop RedStor. Just there. Is that going to work today? Oh, that one's at least popped up. Right, approve. Okay, so again, this time round, we're going to do something slightly different. We're going to get presented with Adam's Jeep page. There it is. Now I could make a choice. Maybe I could say, look, I'll email this link around to all my users. They're quite technical savvy. Or maybe you're going to power up a VM, create a traditional file server, but you now need to get that 1.2 gig or terabytes of data back from RedStor to a traditional file server because you don't know how long Microsoft's going to be down for. So you can either use either of our tools. So let me download the little tool. You've seen me use this before. Now, this time we don't do full system disaster recovery, so permanent recovery or temporary. I'm going to do temporary. And you'll notice I'm not putting in an encryption key this time because we've already done the multi-factor authentication. So it's just a case of me to choose, I'd like S for SharePoint, and I'm going to map. Let's do all my backups. There you go. Let's hit mount. And let me now show you, there's my 15 terabytes from earlier. I've now got an S drive. Might take a while to download all of the catalogs here. See, there we go. There's all of the different dates and times. So let's go on the 19th of August. Adam's Jeep page. And let's go into my files. Let's go into my test data. And let's go and have a look at, I don't know, car stereo manual. There we go. All this random stuff that I collect and get my mouse to work. So that is how quickly, using RedStor, in the event of a disaster, which I hope doesn't happen, but you know as well as I do, like when Facebook's down and Spotify and Twitter and all that sort of stuff, it does happen. So with RedStor, put it simply, you can access the data from a web browser from anywhere in the world. You can back up a device to our cloud service from anywhere in the world, fully integrated with Google, Microsoft 365, Windows, Linux, and Mac. And we've got obviously other integration for like Xero, Salesforce, QuickBooks, and also Azure VMs as well. So that's, again, I'm not going to go through it on this particular demo, but this is very hot off the press that we can actually back up VMs in Azure and give you complete access from a web console. You can do full DR either back to Azure or back to another location. As I say, that's quite in depth. I'm not going to go through that on this session, but I've only shown you a very small percentage of some of the capabilities that we have within RedStor. So Tom, I'll open it up for you now, if that's okay. Is there any questions that you have?
Perfect. Yeah, there is. I would like a demo of the Azure virtual machines set at some point in the future.
Yeah.
And I've just got a couple of questions with regard to what I'm discussing then. So what is it like for running reports? Say, for example, there was an outage and the IT network administrator had to go to management to say, look, this is the report, this is what data it was, but actually RedStor's done this, this, and this. There you go.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So can you see the backup status up here where you can see if there was any warnings and errors?
Yeah.
We're very, very soon to drop a new interface into this that is going to let you click on that, and it's going to dive to the actual server that's having the issue or mailbox, and then it's going to take you to an FAQ that's going to show you how to resolve that issue. Now, we're in a bit of a strange limbo land, actually, because we wanted to enable that multi-factor authentication. So what's been driving me nuts throughout the whole demo. That was a very important piece to RedStor, and it's taken a long time for us to get that right. And what that's meant is we actually have an old console that we don't give out anymore. And the main reason why we don't give it out is, sadly, it's quite old and it doesn't support multi-factor authentication. And we don't want to be supporting a Windows application. We want everything in the cloud. So to answer you in a nutshell, so next month we are going to have awesome reporting built into the management console. If I can quickly get into my Outlook, which is where I was restoring those emails from earlier, actually. So you hopefully will have a restore there for 14th of August or whenever it was that I performed that restore. But whilst we're in here, what I can show you is we've got overview reports. Now, again, you can't configure them yet from the Red App interface, but we can configure these as you as an MSP, that you'll get an email, a list of the servers, how much data they're protecting, how long the duration of the transfer took. So there we go. We've got just under 700 meg, took 8 minutes. The last backup was successful. And basically you get over here a 7-day sort of history of anything that might have had a wobble. Maybe a server wasn't booted up or was off, or maybe a service pack hadn't been applied. And if there are any errors, you can also see here. So we are in a bit of a crazy limbo land, but we are working very hard to build in better reporting, and that's coming in next month, which I'm really looking forward to. So the short answer is we've got really, really in-depth reporting landing within the RedStor Cloud app next month.
Perfect. My next question is with regard to support.
Okay. Yeah, awesome. So in a nutshell, we provide the support. So obviously your customers, if they have a problem, their first port of call really should be you as the MSP. It's your relationship between the customer. But unusually with RedStor, if anybody contacts us, we'll support them. We've got 24/7 support around the globe as well. So it really doesn't matter what time of the evening or the early hours of the morning, because unfortunately, when disasters strike, they don't happen to let you know in advance. So the simple answer is we've got 24/7 support. We are really, really laxed in how we support people. So if your end user called us up direct because Tom, no disrespect, but maybe you were fast asleep, they would still get support. We'll pass the feedback back to you and keep you tapped in whatever was the problem. But yeah, and we've also got FAQs as well. So I might have mentioned the RedStor's been going 20 odd years. So as you can imagine, if I go to support.redstor.com, and let's just say, for example, VSS with servers, for SQL Exchange is a common issue. So maybe let's look at common VSS error messages and troubleshooting. So we take the time whenever our engineers troubleshoot something, pretty much entrenched in their mind is if they need to do something more than once, well, then they need to create an FAQ. So we create FAQs, we publish them. I don't know when this one was last modified. There we go. It's last updated 6 months ago. So we are always keeping on top. If we've got errors, we really want this to be self-service and error-free as possible. But if there is an error, then we create FAQs. So, you should be able to 9 times out of 10 find the answer within our support desk. But if you're still stuck and you need some help, give us a call or drop us an email. As simple as that.
So it's just one level of support then. There's no, like with other companies where there's different levels of support, it's just a case of having one level of support, and if it's an issue, it would be resolved over a remote session or a call then.
Absolutely.
And then the final 2 questions are, some schools in the UK are governed by the local councils, and especially my local primary school and high school, where they have to use 2 versions prior to the latest because they believe that is more secure. Even though we know it isn't, it's actually controlled by the council.
Okay.
I know you do a lot with schools. I was just wondering, would that be possible, even though I know it's in the web? Would that be possible? Is it just a case of use the latest?
So I guess really what we're talking about here is change control and being able to restrict when things get updated. So the first thing I'd say is, like you say, you always really should be running on the latest version. I know that there are organizations out there like Cash Points that might even be running on blooming Windows 95 out there. I mean, I'm sure we've all seen them at a petrol station when they've crashed and we laugh at the blue screen of death. Anyway, point being is you really should always be running the latest, greatest versions. Not only do we bring out new features with each release, we also fix critical bugs. So if there's a bug there, we must squish it quickly and get the software updates pushed out. So on that is there's no need for a server to reboot if RedStor updates. We perform the backup, and at the end of the backup, our service says, oh, by the way, you were on version 21.9 and there's 21.10 now available. So depending, and there are settings as well, to answer your question, Tom, to prevent upgrades from taking place. But I don't really recommend it. There isn't any need. There's no downtime or loss of service during a RedStor update. So it's not like your normal Windows server updates on a Tuesday where the server might need to be rebooted.
That is perfect. And then the final question is, what happens if there's ever downtime or there's any errors on your servers where a customer won't be able to, say, access their site, or they may be through, say, halfway through a recovery and it just goes, if you will?
Yeah, so there's actually more than one answer for that. So I'll just quickly bring your attention to that we always have a primary and a secondary copy of a customer's data. And at any point in time, if I can bring up the backup interface, and if I go to the restores, there's this little button over here that at any point in time, if I want to test restoring from the mirror, I can actually choose the mirror Or let's say we both decided that there was so much data and you have such flaky comms, you'd like RedStor to send you a NAS with the data. We'd like the NAS back afterwards, please. But we can point that to the IP address and port of a mobile service. So we can package up the data, you can recover from the primary copy, you can recover from the mirror, completely self-help. Now, obviously, this is our bread and butter. This is not built on tin pot services. You know, we pride ourselves on our uptime. We do have a maintenance window like most cloud companies. So what we do is we govern our service on what's called the 5 nines. So 99.999% uptime. And any time that we are doing updates, because we need to do updates, we alert all of our customers and we'll tell them when these updates are going to happen. And it's normally during the day because backups typically happen at night. But in the scenario that you were onboarding a customer and during the backups failed for whatever reason, we've put in a hell of a lot of safeguarding, like resilience and retrying, and it will just keep on retrying until the server's back up and then start sending the data. And that's again on the restores as well. So hopefully answered that question. You know, touch wood, in the 19 years I've been working for RedStor, we've never lost a customer's data. We always keep 2 geographically diverse revisions of that data, and this is our bread and butter. This is what this is the software that we develop and we maintain. So back to the support side of things, you're not talking to RedStor about troubleshooting our software and then us saying it's not our problem, go and talk to Amazon storage. It's one company to contact, and it's our baby. So that's probably really all I can say on it, is that it's designed to be as resilient and robust as possible.
Well, that is perfect. Well, thank you once again for this session.
No, you're welcome.
What I will now do is, if we stop the recording and then you can send it to me, I will then
right now
send now